Vanaf dit moment stoppen we met handen schudden. Dus u kunt voet zoenen, u kunt elleboog stoten, wat u ook wilt. Ik zie op scholen allerlei...
Some habits are hard to shake. In this video that was widely shared on social media, the Dutch Prime Minister shakes hands, right after telling his audience that they should avoid doing just that. Officials around the world are at the front line of the fight against the spread of the new coronavirus, and some are giving the example by reducing contacts with the public and their counterparts.
Instead of a handshake, an elbow tap.
But a number of high-level politicians have hit the headlines in recent days after testing positive for the virus. A health minister in the UK, French lawmakers, several members of the Iranian government, and a top aide of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro are among those infected. And the Canadian Prime Minister self-isolated after his wife tested positive. The rising number of cases among officials is raising questions about the health of world leaders and whether the pandemic can threaten the government's ability to do their job.
One of the big questions across the world is how do lawmakers pass laws if they're not in Parliament?
In the US, President Trump has downplayed the risks of potentially contracting coronavirus.
Let's put it this way, I'm not concerned. Okay.
Still, the White House is evaluating his exposure to the virus. A Brazilian official who tested positive recently came into contact with the US president at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. White House officials have repeatedly said that the president and vice president didn't show any symptoms and didn't need to be tested.
I have not been tested for the coronavirus.
Across the government, several lawmakers, including Republican Senators Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz, have declared that they were self-isolating after coming into contact with infected individuals.
There isn't much of a plan per se should a member contract it, but a lot of offices are moving to working remotely. A lot of offices are developing those contingency plans. They've allocated more money for laptops, for more supplies.
France has already taken measures to protect its president. Emmanuel Macron has scaled back face-to-face meetings after 5 lawmakers in the National Assembly tested positive.
A lot of leaders are putting into place sort of contingency plans. Leadership does tend to skew a bit older. In the case of President Macron, he's a relatively young leader. He's 41. But when you start to look abroad, you have leaders who are in their 70s, their 80s. And the concern is that they're potentially more vulnerable to the virus.
The UK Parliament is composed of the House of Lords and the House of Commons. In both chambers, lawmakers famously sit very close to each other.
Several hundred lawmakers piled into the debating chamber to listen to the UK budget, and there wasn't a single face mask in sight. It's unclear exactly what the Parliament is going to do if there is a major outbreak. They haven't detailed the contingency plan, and lawmakers have said that actually they do need to be sitting throughout this period because they need to scrutinise the government's response to the coronavirus crisis, and they also may need to pass emergency legislation.
In the UK, similarly to other countries, lawmakers must be physically present in order to pass legislation, do their jobs and keep the country running smoothly. And despite the risks of the new coronavirus spreading among lawmakers, rooted traditions and protocol in governments around the world might prove hard to change.
Members of Congress have to be physically present to vote. In the House, they have these cards and they stick them into a machine and then they vote yes or no. They have not digitized anything in the Senate, and so they vote either thumbs up or thumbs down. Members of Congress are certainly nervous. There are several members who want to go home, and they've talked about trying to get some sort of voting remotely plan set, which will not pass here. Leadership would staunchly oppose that.